Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to check that we're live. Are we? If you refresh the screen, can you let me know we're live?
Yeah, I'm refreshing now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Excellent. We are live. And are we audible?
Not yet, no.
Okay. I'm glad I've got my own sound check and video check expert here, so that's a relief.
You've got support there, haven't you? I can hear.
Wait a second. I had it on mute.
Okay, excellent. So,
you try turning it off and on again.
Yeah. That's right. Do I have to listen to her? Just...
Yeah, that's right.
Hi, everybody. My name is Zoë Alexandra. I have this Zenergy Wellness Talks vlog that I started just last week, and I've invited today the wonderful Dion Tabrett to speak today. Dion is, hi, Dion. I'll just give a brief introduction. So Dion is a teacher who taught courses in the Middlesex University Bachelor of Science degree program, and he also has a Bachelor of Science honors in Natural Sciences and a Master's of Science in Molecular Biology. Dion is also a keen gardener. He has a black belt in martial arts and plays one of my favorite things, flamenco guitar, and is the bass player in a reggae band. So one of the many musicians that move over into homeopathy. It must be something in the frequencies there. I'm not sure what it is, but fantastic. Dion has 3 children, and today we're going to learn more about him and his book, which I've read and is fantastic. It's Burnett Rediscovered. So we'll get into the book a little bit later, but welcome, Dion.
Oh yeah, hello there. Hi Zoe, thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. And how are you?
I'm good. I've just finished a long day in clinic, so I'm at the end of my day. But what are we? Tuesday, so yeah, keep going till Saturday. But yeah, all good. All
okay,
fine.
Great, excellent. So Ruby says hello, and so does Gam 5/8. So before I get started, I just want to say that I was a student in the Bachelor of Science degree program, and this is where I was very fortunate to have Dion as one of the teachers there, one of my teachers, and really very insightful classes, and that's why I thought I would love to have him on, and his book is have found to be very, very helpful. So let's get right on in. Why did you start? What made you decide to study homeopathy?
Oh, now there's a question. I started studying homeopathy at a really young age. In fact, when I applied to what was before Centre of Homeopathic Education, was a college called the London College of Homeopathy, which was, as far as I know, the first one of its kind, and had teachers like Robert Davidson and Martin Miles and Ian Watson and Tony Southam and all the old guard. And I actually applied there. I think I was about 18 or 19, and they said, no, go away, you're too young. So I complained and said, I'm not too young, I want to start. And they did begrudgingly let me in, but that's not answering your question. The reason I studied homeopathy was we had a new drummer in the band, and he was an older guy. We were all 17, 18, and he was a good sort of 10 years older than us. And at one of the rehearsals, he saw me puffing on an inhaler, a Ventolin inhaler. I'd had asthma then for about 3 or 4 years, and the doc said, oh, you know, you just got asthma, it's how it is, you've got to take these inhalers for the rest of your life. And he saw me puffing away, and he goes, oh, okay. He was coming to the end of his college course, undergraduate course. He said, I need some cases for college, can I take your case and prescribe for you? I said, what are you talking about? He said, I do homeopathy. I said, I don't even know what that is. And he briefly explained, and I had a poor understanding. I said, yeah, why not? Let's have an experiment, see where it goes. And he took my case and analysed it with a friend of his from college. And then he prescribed for me, and about 4 months later, peak flow was right up, didn't need the Ventolin, the blue inhaler, and slowly weaned myself off the brown inhaler. And within 6 months, no asthma. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, because I've been told this is it now. This is the deal for you for life. And so I thought, that's really good. And we became close friends, and we liked playing chess together. We played chess last weekend, actually. And I said, oh, what's all this homeopathy then? It's fantastic. He said, yeah, here's some books. And he lent me some books. And I thought, oh, this is pretty good. And I just kept borrowing books off him. And then I sat in with him as in his clinic. And then I applied to the college. And they said, no, you're too young. And I said, no, I'm not. And they said, oh, all right, then you seem keen. And then his last year was my first year. So we were living in Berkshire, so 60 miles west of London. So we used to get the train up and down to college. It was a 3 days a week, 3 weeks a month course that we did, then the full-time course. So we would share the train journeys up and down to college and discuss materia medica and cases on the way and on the way back. So yeah, that was my route in to it.
Oh, that's wonderful. That just the joy of actually being able to train at the same school and have trips in with your buddy who helped clear your asthma up. It's just amazing. Yeah. And then you went on to have a solid practice as well. So which is and I've read a little bit about it. I'm not going to jump in and talk about it because I know you go a little bit into it in your book as well about kind of what led you into writing the book. But I'll leave it to that because it's always best told by the person. And what do you now? Okay, so this might not apply. I'm asking every homeopath because I'm curious, because sometimes it can be the childhood or, kind of like what you experienced when you were growing up that leads you to actually go in and try to pursue it. Because here you were in a band, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, I want to try homeopathy. So not everybody would be, a lot of people would be like, oh, great, asthma cleared, on my way. Do you think it was just, at your upbringing kind of led you down that path in any way, shape, or form?
I can't think of any sort of particular highlights that I would put my fingers on and say, that was a stepping stone, and then this is a sequence that's followed. I wasn't a particularly healthy kid, had a few medical conditions, and then, asthma diagnosis. So I was a bit protective about my health, but I was robust enough. But I think it was, played in bands since mid-teens, and that was great. It was really good fun. But it's a lot of late nights and it's a lot of traveling. And then I just think it was, for me, I wanted to study something as well. When I started studying homeopathy, it was the very first time that I'd applied myself to the discipline of academia, of looking at something and trying to learn it and finding it complicated, but being tenacious and not letting go and keep going and keep going. And so I think that Lynn was the guy who treated me in the band and lent me the books and really sort of guided me into what to study and clinic as well. That I think it just sparked a curiosity, and I don't know if there was a sequence of events that led up to that, or it's just serendipity. It just happened in the right way.
I'm wondering, this would not be a good intake if I were to say this, but could it be just a questioning upbringing? So did your parents question things or encourage curiosity? Or
yeah, I suppose so in a way. Mum's a computer programmer. Dad was a barber and ran a barber shop. So my mum was the academic, book smart one, but my dad was the business brain, behind organising that side of things. So I can't think that it was a specific questioning of things. I mean, it must have been sort of 14 or 15. So I got into reggae at a young age, but I got into punk as well. If you're British and you're into the alternative music scene, then there's a big marriage between punk music and reggae music. They're both rebel music. They're both, pointing out the very true injustices in society. And it's, I suppose, therefore, it's a logical step to then say, well, hang on, the medical system isn't exactly just, the pharma is a big self-regulating business that, if they do a study, a research, and the results come back as not what they want, they bury it, they don't publish it, and as we know with the banks, when you get a self-regulating industry, they take advantage and stretch too far. And think it did make, I suppose that sort of getting involved in the music scene did make me question things and think, okay, maybe that's not the only way. Maybe there are other ways, and maybe, the business side of things is shady at times as well.
That's interesting, because art does reflect life and is supposed to help you question, which is great. It actually did do that.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that's very logical, and makes, just thinking back to the chess, it's very logical. So it'll lead you down that path.
It's fascinating, because you get to a certain level where all the pieces move and a few patterns and things like that. But the really excellent chess players that smash me all the time, they're completely creative with it, because you look at it and think, oh, it's all left brain, it's all logical, you just got to memorize loads of stuff. That's not true after a certain level. After a certain level, it's like speaking to academic mathematicians. They don't see it as I would. They see it as patterns and waves and colors and all sorts of depths to it beyond the black and white. It's a logical, stepwise, methodical sequence. So, yeah, I think there's huge creativity in some of those sciences as well.
Yeah, Kasparov with his queen sacrifice and winning. That still sticks in my
head. Get you, Kasparov and his queen sacrifice. That's right. Yeah. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate thing in chess: to lose your queen, then win the game.
And at that level, to sacrifice and come through and win. Now that's okay. We got some good comments. Ruby saying, "Laugh out loud." And Gan says, "Punk, reggae, and homeopathy, a good mix." Yeah, it really is.
Get some hip hop in there as well.
And a flamenco guitar. I'm a huge flamenco fan. So
really?
Yeah. We used to have a really good restaurant. We used to bring people from Spain in Toronto, people from Spain to actually perform. It's amazing. But it's kind of I just find it's funny that sometimes when you go down into specific areas or specific routes, that people will have similar interests. I think that's amazing. It always astounds me. So when I saw flamenco on your profile, I thought, wow. And now as well, I think, okay, this is it's not spooky. It's just it happens more often, I think, than we think.
That was by default, because I play bass guitar in the bands mostly, sometimes guitar, but mostly bass guitar. And then you go to parties or around the fire and places like that, and people would say, "Oh, go on, give Dion the guitar. He plays in a band." I go, "Well, I can play some bass lines." And okay. Yeah, not everybody wants to hear that. So I thought, I've got to get my act together. I better study something. Oh, I know. I study flamenco guitar. And I've got some tunes to crack out when the situation arises, and then just fell in love with it. It's fantastic.
Awesome. That's awesome. So now we'll, I think we'll get into the homeopathic portion of this. But I find it really interesting what leads us into these paths that we go on. So there are proponents of homeopaths treating them, proponents of homeopaths treating themselves with homeopathy, and then there are other homeopaths who think, no, you really shouldn't. You should find another homeopath. And what are your thoughts on this, and why?
Okay, I think if you've got some lesion state, some diagnosed pathology state, and you wish to trial homeopathic medicines for that, you are immediately blunting the capacity by trying to do it yourself. You just, the objectivity just goes straight down, subjectivity comes straight up. I don't think it's very efficient at all for an individual to try and take their own case, analyze it and prescribe for it, and most importantly, follow it long term. So, people who I've spoken to, friends, when they get something wrong, they'll take something, then they'll jump to the next thing, then they'll jump to the next thing, and then they'll give up and go to a practitioner and say, I'm just changing remedies too quickly, or I know I'm not giving it, the time span that it deserves. So I think, I don't think you should. I think you should go and see a professional. I think if you're a professional, you should go and see a professional. By all means, input your ideas. But I treat a number of homeopaths and students, and yeah, I don't think you can be accurate doing it on your own for yourself. But I do encourage provings. I've done a number of provings on myself, and they're really sort of quite crude ones because it's just me. And that again, that's not a very objective way to do it. But I do note physical symptoms. So I recently proved sulfur. I've got a lovely big rash in my left axilla. And then I'm now proving silica, which I've done about 5 times before. And I've just got the first white spot on my nail after, well, I have to look at the bottle. After, yeah, 2 weeks. It normally takes 2 to 3 weeks for the symptoms to come out. So I prove silica and I get 18 or 20 white spots across my nails and things like that. So provings, yeah. Self-treatment, no, you're not going to be accurate. You're not going to give it a fair trial. And I think most people are going to jump too quickly from one prescription to the other. But maybe other people have had other experiences. But yeah, that's my thoughts anyway.
Yeah, you have to be ruthless in taking your own case, and you have to. Yeah, I think it's and you really have to know what you're doing.
Have you talked to people who have done it successfully, who have found that they've had an advancement and improvement on it?
That's how I got into homeopathy.
You treated yourself?
I went to a number of homeopaths, and then the last one retired, and I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I had asthma, and I had food sensitivities, and so I thought, okay. So I started to read and I started to study. I studied, a lot of David Little's articles online, and then I did a lot that didn't make sense. I had a little bit of improvement. I'm like, this is great. I should be a homeopath. And then I read Hahnemann Revisited, and that that changed everything. That changed. Then it was within 2.25 months, I cleared a whole layer. My energy went through the roof, and it was like. But I was ruthless. I went through every page. I didn't know what, I wasn't experienced, but I went through every page into a few years before through the Materia Medica and said, am I this? And I'm like, and I'm talking the mental emotional, like, you know what? I am. I'm not going to lie to myself. I will not be healthy if I don't tell myself, I'm not, ruthlessly honest with myself. So checked off what, some of them and just went through every single one. So I learned the Materia Medica kind of that way. And then, but then I took the remedy in a dry dose, high dose, and the aggravation was huge. And then it was through Hahnemann Revisited that I took it in a liquid dose, LM1, a little bit of LM2, and boom, it lifted. And again, my energy went up, and I wasn't catching colds and flus all the time, right? So it just really boosted everything. And then I was able to eat stuff, but you do have to be ruthless. And if you're not, like, if I'm not getting results, I'll go to a homeopath. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes maybe you're going to be blinded by something, but and sometimes it's really hard to go through and say, yeah, I am that way. And sometimes you just don't see it. Sometimes your friends
treat yourself now,
right?
Do you still treat yourself now?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Well, I suppose you save on consultation fees this way.
Well, the one that retired, but trained with the UK, the one who used to work with the homeopath to the Queen in the UK, and I'm like, I just can't keep running around looking for people, so I'm going to do it myself. Yeah. But then I read textbooks. I didn't just dally. I read textbooks, and then I went to school. So I'm just getting a lot of laugh out louds right now. But anyway, so and I do think sometimes it can be easier to go to somebody else. I found that worked for me, but I think and I also found out, like, I wouldn't give a 1M dry dose to somebody, not for a precise match for a chronic condition. That was
because of your individual response.
And then it was only because I read Hahnemann Revisited and went through some other book, the following 2 textbooks from de Shepherd, that I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back to that remedy. I gave myself the wrong potency, and that was huge. So that was what I learned from that. But again, it's a process, and I'm somebody who follows through. So not some people might get a little bit frustrated, in which case then you really want to go to a homeopath. And if you're not having any results, then you really want to go to a homeopath. But if you do try to think, you don't want to be giving yourself a whole bunch of dosages, which you're going to have to kind of peel back the layers later because you kind of messed up the picture with giving yourself a whole bunch of different remedies. Right? Yeah. That's the thing. But I appreciate. Sorry, yeah. Everybody's approach, because it's it's nice to relax and also go to somebody else.
I'm glad you had a good result, but I still wouldn't recommend it.
No, that's fine. Yeah, you've got to. That's why I'm asking, because I'm just curious as to people's opinions. So that's and experience, and that's the main thing. So now I'm going to go on to, are there any books you've read, homeopathic or otherwise? And we're not going to touch on yours yet, because we're going to get into yours in a little bit, but homeopathic or otherwise, which greatly enhanced your understanding of homeopathy and the ability to treat more effectively. And I know your schooling also helped immensely with your understanding of pathology. So I'm just wondering, you know, anything related, or even if it's art related, is fine.
Well, I think the most influential books have definitely been Burnett's, James Compton Burnett's 23 books, because they're one of the main sources for longitudinal case studies, cases that stretch over 2, 4, 8, sometimes even 15 years. And we don't have enough of that in our literature. We have an abundance of materia medica and philosophy and repertory, but actual clinical application of homeopathy over a long time, Burnett is still the king for me. So I've got to give him that one. Hahnemann, Jorgen on Chronic Diseases, of course. And I love Isiaga. That's what book number 2 is about. And I've listened to lots and lots of audio recordings of him, which has been fantastic. And I like his book, The Treatise on Homeopathic Medicine, but it's not easy to read. It's not easy to assimilate for my brain anyway. It's great information in it. So those are the ones that are top of my mind. I have got some new ones recently, because that's how it goes, isn't it? That's what I'm trying. I was recommended, cheers Nathan, Eric Van Vonsel's books, Classical Homeopathy, Evidence-Based Medicine, which is, I'm only just started, so I'm only on the introduction, but these are long-term cases as well. So I'm hoping that this is going to be something I can recommend to undergraduates. But I'm still reading it, so I can't give you an answer yet. But I'm hoping that's good.
Yeah, because, you know, I just going back and reading the old cases. Yeah, that's, if you find it's useful, please let us know, and I'll probably just add it, because I'll upload this video to Rumble afterwards, and I'll add your whether you recommend it later. So if you want to just send me a note once you're done it, because they are helpful to see. They had so many cases, and they were generally in clinics where it was easier to, you know, in medical clinics, in medical and in hospitals. Exactly. It was just, yeah.
Exactly. There's another, Peter Alex, The Homeopathic Treatment of Lyme Disease. That's another one that I'm going through at the moment. Veterinary homeopathy. I love the veterinary homeopaths. They're great. George MacLeod, Christopher Day. This guy, Peter Alex, if I've got it right, that he's a vet, I'm sure he is. But their materia medica observations are just excellent. You know, if you're treating young children and babies, then check out the veterinary literature, because you get really observable materia medica keynotes and speculation. But yeah,
that's fabulous. Thank you. So that's something I'll recommend in the chats. I'll write down and include all the books you're recommending now, because I think it is, we're all looking for something to help us become better homeopaths. It never stops.
We all need more books, yeah?
Exactly.
Always the way.
Now, could you describe a very difficult case you had and what helped you solve it, including, you know, anything that helped you solve it, but including principles of homeopathy training or readings that you felt, and it could be a happenstance experience, because sometimes that's what happens. I've, you know, had cases where, or cases told where just flukily enough, you come across the answer. And even some cases that I've worked on myself, you know, when you're researching and you're reading, and all of a sudden the light goes on, you know, it never stops, because you're always researching if you're having difficulty with the case. But is there a particular case that you could think of that that you could describe?
Yeah, for sure. Was it earlier this year, after a good, I'm going from memory now, and I'm going to abridge the case. After a good 10 months of treatment, had a wonderful result with a person who consulted for abscess of the ovaries. And what I really like about this case is we've got all the paperwork, all the scans, and you can see the measurements of the abscess when she's initiated homeopathic treatment, and then the decrease and resolution of it ultimately after a long time. And that case, that really exemplifies Burnett's idea of a hybrid or complex case, where it's so many different working parts, so many wheels and cogs within each other, that it's never one remedy. It's always going to be a sequence over time. You know, hence his adoption of the ladders of remedies. And that case, we rolled through a number of different organ support remedies, a number of different lesion remedies specifically for the ovarian abscess, in the ovary. There was a couple of interjections of fundamental similimum state remedies, but they weren't the main players. And there was also intercurrent nosodes for chronic disease states. And I think that case, you know, to read it out from start to finish, it'd be quite boring, because, you know, on this month they had this remedy, next month they had that remedy, and then it's what, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, sometimes between scan results. So you don't know specifically how things are going until the next scan rolls in. But the crowning glory of that case was, you know, she would go to the docs. They said, okay, you've got to have surgery. It's the only option. It's never going to clear up. If it gets worse, it could be very, very serious. And she bartered with them and bargained, said, can we go another 3 months? And they go, yeah, okay. And then the scan result coming out, it's 5 millimeters smaller. That shouldn't be happening. And then after this pattern occurred for about 6 or 7 months, the medic actually wrote on her paper, on her scan report, ovarian abscess reducing, to continue with homeopathic management, which in all the decades I've worked, I've had the nod. I've had a, I've got friends who are medics. So I've had the tip of the hat and say, yeah, okay, just keep doing that. But I'd never had somebody write it down and say, continue with homeopathic management. And they used the word homeopathic.
Oh, that is amazing.
I'm putting that in my, it's stored up ready to one day put into slides and have an abridged version of the case. But the take-home message was, it was a sequence of remedies. It was organ remedies, it was lesion remedies, it was miasmatic, it was the occasional fundamental. And then after all those layers, we're now working towards fundamental constitutional treatment. But yeah, that was one of my favorite recent ones for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. And that, yeah, just having that written down. How often does that happen, across all of Britain or all of North America?
No, it doesn't happen. What they say is it was a misdiagnosis, or there was an artifact in the scan result, or everything was removed when we did the last procedure. That's what they say.
That's nice. And it's because it's nice, because also I hope that that MD will actually then think of forwarding patients to you, because
that's what the nursing staff and the docs said. They said, as she came to the close of her treatment with them, and they were all delighted, and she brought them flowers and giving her the flexibility to have continual scans and barter between having surgery or not having surgery. But when it all came to its conclusion, she took that in as a thank you. They said, well, we know where to send people from in the future if this happens. That won't happen. They're too busy. and the next case will come in and they'll do what their protocols are. That's their jobs. But it was nice that they had the thought, well, maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're referring right now, and I don't know. But yeah, I'd be surprised.
I hope they do, because even with the thought, they could be thinking, okay, well, it works. And so, that also, I don't, it looks good on them to refer to help and to work with somebody that they're seeing that there are the results with. So you never know. I'll be on the optimistic side. You never know. And I hope
it's worth being optimistic. But yeah, like I said, I've got friends who are medics, and some of them say, we know it works, we're just not interested. When you've got that depth of conviction, it's just, okay, yeah. And some of them, the light goes on, but from our perspective, for us to be interested in this medical system and to apply ourselves and to study hard and to have busy, successful practices, that's one thing. But if you initially train as an allopath and then the light goes on and you think there's something here, actually, you have two choices. You can dabble with it and face the ridicule of your peers, which means you're not really jumping in, you're just dipping your toes in the water. Or you can leap all the way in which case that's it, you're out the gang, you're out the club now. That's right. And you really should know better, because you've done all this training up to this point. So I really take my hats off to the medical homeopaths, the allopath trained who then adopt homeopathy, because for them it's a bigger deal. Their social status, their peer groups, their mentors, their supervisors. I mean, Burnett's 50 Reasons for Being a Homeopath when he passed his exam up in Glasgow, the professor of anatomy shook his hand, which was unheard of. They treated the students with disdain, but he quizzed him for hours and couldn't fault his anatomical knowledge. And then when Burnet converted to homeopathy, that professor wrote to him, said, what you doing? You could have the highest medical honours in the land. You could achieve the highest echelons of allopathy. And Burnet wrote back, yeah, I could have all the worldly honours, but I've got to do what I think's right. And that's a rare conviction for somebody to have.
It is. It's hard to say goodbye to status, and as well as there's a lot more money in that. Although as an MD homeopath, I'm sure he was doing quite well. I don't know what he earned during his lifetime, but yeah, it's the money is different. Yeah.
Burnet smashed it. When he died, he was the most successful, richest practitioner in all of London, out of the homeopaths, out of the allopaths, out of everyone.
And out of the allopaths. Oh, wow.
Yeah, out of the lot. He trumped everyone. Bad use of the word trump. Walk back from that one. Yeah, he did really well. Oh yeah, that's amazing, because I knew he did well for homeopathy. I didn't know he was beating the salary rates or the earnings of other allopathic doctors. That's amazing. Okay, that's good to know. You would think now that share with your medic friends and see if they're thinking, Yeah. Well, yeah. But now, interestingly, Burnet, just like Hahnemann, he operated a sliding scale. So he saw a lot of royalty, lords and ladies, merchants from North America and all over the world, and charged them top dollar. But then he would treat, he'd go and visit the country estate, but then he would treat, the servants, the tea ladies, the stable boys, the gardeners for nothing. And he got some of his best cases that way, his best results that pushed on his understanding of materia medica. So just like Hahnemann, it was a sliding scale of fees to get to where he got to.
That's super. Yeah, it's depending on your regulations, you can or you may or may not be able to do it. So again, I should actually tell your viewers, sometimes we'll be talking about different courses of treatment, and in some countries they're allowed, in some countries they're not. So always look towards the rules and the regulations within your own country, just to ensure, in your own province or state, etc., just to ensure that you're following what is permissible and what is not. So we're not, so in Ontario you can't use placebo, but so and which is again, so it varies per area, and it's all fine. You just work within what you can. So that's one, I'm okay with that. So I'll head on to the next question. Okay. What advice would you give? I'll say new homeopaths, but sometimes, people maybe just always kind of wanted to get into more, may have graduated 10 years ago, but really haven't delved in, but just people who are trying to build their practices. And what would you say to, advice would you give them to help them avoid some of the common missteps?
Okay, to build up a practice and to sustain living from it. Yeah. Okay. Well, first off, I'm going to criticize homeopaths, and I think this is a downfall of ours, is that we're all too insular, we're all too isolated and guarding of our practices. I used to work in multidisciplinary alternative health centres, the thing, acupuncturists, osteopaths, homeopaths, etc. And I really noticed from very early on that what osteopaths tend to do, and they tend to be some of our busiest practitioners in the UK, is an osteopath will start a practice and they'll cover a couple of days a week, and then maybe a day or two elsewhere. And then as soon as they're busy on those 2 days, they'll bring in a second osteopath. And as soon as the 3-4 days are filled, they'll bring in a third osteopath. And now they're covering Monday to Friday with osteopathy. Because if you put your back out, have an injury, sports injury, whatever you need manipulation, then if that's Monday, you can't, they're back in Thursday. Well, that's no good. I'll find someone else, yeah? Homeopaths do the exact opposite. And I've sat in the meetings where, they'll take on a Thursday And then when they have a meeting and say, oh, somebody's approached us who does homeopathy as well, and they'd like to work 1 day a week, the homeopath will fire off and go, no, I'm the homeopath here. You can't have another one. You'll take my business away. We don't try and fill 4 or 5 days a week, which is what the public wants. If your kid's got an earache or tonsillitis, you want a remedy today, 24 hours at the very latest, but you want it today. So I think one thing to sustain a good practice is to join up with 2 or 3 colleagues and take over Monday to Friday, however you do it, in the clinic or online or mixture. I think that if you can become part of an organization that can offer homeopathic treatment across the week, that's a real big bonus, and that will build a practice. But right, I'll stop criticizing us now, because I know that some of us do that. I'm talking mainly about my experience in the UK. I think that what I was taught at an initial stage by Lynn, and then reinforced by teachers at college, and reinforced again with Burnett's and Hahnemann's work, is you take a case, you analyze it, and you prescribe all in the same session. So you give your remedy at the end of the case taking. So hour for first patient, half an hour for follow-ups, 99% of the time. At the end of that hour or half hour, that's when you prescribe. And I don't know how much of a norm that is in your area. It's not very common in my area, but it's how I've always worked, and it makes it so much more efficient and easier. You just have to take the plunge and go for it, and trust your training and trust your decisions. And we're human, we're going to make mistakes, but I think that that's a really important way to make the job manageable. And I've met people that they do a day at clinic, and then they'll take all the cases home to repertorize them and prescribe for them. And that's not traditionally how we've done this work. That's not historically what Hahnemann or Burnett or Kent or anyone did like that. So I think that having that approach to clinical practice is absolutely essential to make it an efficient job and to make it, a successful practice.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting if you've got a permanent office and you're able to actually have your homeopathic remedies on hand. That also makes it easier. It just depends, because it's logistics. Yeah, it is. Unfortunately with that, and sometimes if you're doing liquid dose, you'll prepare it, but sometimes you can give instructions to the patient to go and get their own remedies and get set up. But I know it's can often be easier for them just to get it all done. Have the homeopath do it rather than run around and try to figure things out. So it's like it takes a little bit of stress off them. Yeah, they did. I think they did, and I think it's not. I think they did. They did do that way. 100 years ago, and they also had clinics that there were a number of them that got together and talked. It's the Cooper's Club is something that I think is amazing, and I was just mentioning that So I'm trying to get a group of people together. So my college is actually doing a meeting, but also just small groups of homeopaths to talk out cases, because it's these 3 great homeopaths, and we're talking great homeopaths, all 3 of them, what they've left to us. So Clark and Cooper and Compton Burnett, right? Met weekly.
Cool. There's Thomas Skinner as well.
Thomas Skinner. Okay. So, but when you think about it, we don't really do that. And sharing ideas and sharing cases and sharing challenges, some do it, I'm sure. I'm not saying not everybody does it, but just looking at the status of these individuals, they were top of the homeopathic prescribers, around the world, and they were sharing the knowledge. And then, of course, Clark's prescriber. I grew up with that. My mom had that when we were growing up, which was nice. So it's just remembering going through that. But it's just, I think that we'll have a lot of value from that as well. So it's just, maybe just changing the way we do things. Because if you're insular, it's reading helps a lot and going through the books, but also sharing sharing knowledge together and sharing challenges together can really, really help us grow. So it's just I'm hoping that we'll see more of that sort of organically grow up as as we realize, you know, we can help each other. And I always say there are over 3 million people in Toronto, the GTA. We're not competing against each other. and you know, even more so, I'm sure.
And if you can establish something like that where you cover 4 or 5 days a week with different practitioners, and you've also got a really wonderful opportunity for apprenticeship for undergraduates. They can go in and do clinic days, one after the other, however you want to structure it. And that's where you can really learn what clinical reality is like. And it's all good in the classroom, but it's all theoretical in the classroom. And it's, what would I say, 80 to 90% of the time you're getting taught that lecturer's best cases. You're not getting to see, here's one really struggled with, or here's one that got away, or here's one that, you know, we got partially there and then this light came on and we got the understanding. So you do clinicality through just classroom and lectures and journals and books that you don't get if you can have a good apprenticeship experience and see day in, day out. We're seeing 12 people today, you know.
I think most places, most colleges do that. I went to the Canadian College of Homeopathic Medicine, and you were supervised for your own cases, and you watched the a professional homeopath take cases live. And I have to say that was very insightful. And yeah, you need that. You need to actually have that experience. And it can, you know, once you dip your feet in and you take cases yourself and you do a few, you're like, oh, okay, you've got all the knowledge, and you're supervised the whole time anyway. So it you know, you can feel quite comfortable with it. But yeah, you do need that supervision and the mentoring. And then once you actually are on your own, still, you know, 20 years from now, if I've got a tough case, I'm going to be sharing it with my my colleagues. Let's talk. Let's figure it out together. If I can't figure it out. Now, I do have a question here, which I want to get to. GAM 88888 asks, how do you feel about remote appointments?
As in like this, online?
Yes, online, yes.
Yeah. Got to go with it. It's how it is, you know. I think that with lockdowns and how that changed practicing homeopathy, it just became much more acceptable by many people, you know. We were so lucky. You know, if we trained as osteopaths or acupuncturists, that's it. You just shut the door. You know, you can't do it via Zoom or Skype or whatever we're on today. What we're on today, stream something, isn't it? Yeah.
We're on twitch.tv, and actually I'm using so you have to use a streaming software to do it. So this is streaming.
It's entirely viable. It's entirely workable. And from my experience and my colleagues' experience, once everything did go online, it broadened the area to global, that patients would then, previously it was, oh, I'd like to see somebody face to face. I need to see somebody in my vicinity or travel X amount of times a year. Once everyone was online, you could see who you wanted to see because you couldn't see face to face somebody who was just down the road anyway. So it really expanded a lot of practices. And just think back historically, you know, Hahnemann, you know, if you read Richard Hale's biography of Hahnemann, the 2 volumes, and Hahnemann's lesser writings, here's how Hahnemann treated patients. They would write to him with quill and paper, and they would put that into the letterbox, which would then go on a horse and cart across to wherever Hahnemann was living, Leipzig or 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐩𝐿 or Meissen, and he would read it. He would post back a remedy and some questions, which would go back on the horse and cart to the patient, who would then take the remedy and reply by letter back to Hahnemann. And that's how he conducted many of his consultations and follow-up. So we can't grumble about this type of thing. You know, it's a lot quicker. So I think it's perfectly viable, and I think we have to adapt to it. I know it can feel uncomfortable, and I think it's now a blended approach. It's now always going to be face-to-face and online. It certainly will in my practice, and I think it will for the vast majority of us. So yeah, let's adopt it. Let's go with it. We do miss out. I'm a big student of body language. It's a fascinating subject. And I think it's absolutely crucial to give huge materia medica hints and tells. And that is really restricted. I can't see what you're doing with your arms or your legs.
Yeah.
You know, and that is missing, but it's still easier than pen and parchment and horse cart.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's use it.
I agreed. It is. I mean, if you shake somebody with perspiring hands, you get clammy hands. You'll know it when you move them. But in this day and age, a lot of people won't be shaking hands.
That's true. Yeah, which is a symptom in itself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Who was that? Ruby? No. Gam. Thank you. And Gam says thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, so let me just go to the next question. What do you think homeopaths can do to strengthen homeopathy around the world? Now, I think you kind of covered that, but you might want to add something else. And if you think, no, everything I've said is good, it's fine either way.
Yeah, we should just keep getting people better. That's the best thing that we can do. Cured cases is the only way. And I think that we should document them. Almost everyone's got phones with cameras in or tablets. So every skin case, every visible physical lesion, from warts to anything you can think of, I document now. I take photos, or I ask them to take photos, and I ask their permission that it's okay. And we do before, during, and after treatment documentation. Likewise with blood works, if we're treating thyroids, T4, T3, TSH, thyroid antibodies, get all that stuff, ask for their permission to have a copy of it, document it, put it away, measure it again 4 months, 3 months time, whatever the sequence is, and keep all this information, keep it all. And this would be, we can collaborate and have more integrated clinics. We could have prototype Cooper clubs, and we could all build up libraries of, here's 100 cases of eczema that were treated with homeopathy. Here's 100 cases of warts that were treated with homeopathy. And you can get the odd criticism of saying, well, it would have cleared up anyway. It would have dropped off anyway. But if we all start producing hundreds of these cases, then that's a really good body of evidence. So I think that we just need to document some of these biomarkers and how they change, and some of these physical lesions and how they change and cure up, and then present it. This is how we really justify what we're doing as curative. And I know that's just one aspect. I know that's purely physical, and there's multiple different ways, but that physical evidence means a huge amount to a lot of people. I can say that it's my treatment of warts and them dropping off that still this day sends a large percentage of patients. They just, wow, his wart fell off, I'm going to go and see him now. It's just just like, I think it's Hogwarts or Harry Potter or something like that. It's a witchy thing, but if you've got it's easy. We've all got phones. Our patients have all got phones or access to. So as long as they give permission, why don't we do this?
Exactly. Yeah. Now, what in particular initially drew you to study James Compton Burnett?
That was way, way back. My mate Lynn, who got me into it, the drummer, he was also ran the college bookshop. So he has a vast knowledge of homeopathy and the literature. And on our train journeys up and down to London, we discuss what was going on in the college and the lectures, etc. We'd also read books and discuss about the books. And there was two people that he said, "Oh, okay, you should read this person." And one of the earliest ones was Ellis Barker, who was an old homeopath from London, who also publishes mostly casework, clinical work, and Burnett. And I just, as soon as I started reading Burnett, I thought, oh yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy. And I encouraged all my classmates to read him, and they said, oh, he just gives Thuja and Basilinum to everyone. I go, yeah, but there's a reason. He's doing that for a reason. He has to knock down these walls in the case and let the remedy through. And I don't know why. I just got into it. He's got a really nice way of writing. Can be quite complicated at times, but he's quite ferocious as well. He doesn't give any quarter. If his mission many times is to stop the patient going for needless surgery. If he can stop a case with fibroids going for a hysterectomy, and then that person falls pregnant and has a baby. Just his contagious joy in the paper that came across. I thought, yeah, you know, he's a man on a mission. I like this guy. And so, and it's also practical, and I do like the complex aspect. So still read them and still get something new each and every time I reread one of his books. Yeah. Just a big Burnett fanboy at the end of the day. So,
so as I mentioned, I've read your book, Burnett Rediscovered. I'm just going to show you, the audience what this looks like. It is.
There it is.
It's just so well laid out. I'm just going to show you briefly, just very clear. I think there's one area that I really liked. So yeah, just really, oops, I'm not doing that right. Okay, there we go. I just thought you formatted it so well, and
Thanks.
Just because his writings are fabulous, and I read them before I read your book. Not all of them by any stretch, but I just really found them very useful. And then I read your book, and I thought, this is so organized. This helps you find something, you get to the meat of it quickly, and you'll always go to the more in-depth. But wow, just beautifully done, very clear, very easy to find what you're looking for, and I think it just helps stay in your mind a little bit. So the stories or the cases, because if you remember that it was about a 12-year-old boy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those will stick in your mind. But just have a clear idea of what remedies and what circumstances, what are the keynotes, the lines of action was very, very helpful. So I just I loved it. That's all I'm saying.
That's exactly what it was written for, to try and help somebody navigate through all the multiple works of Burnett, because it is complex in times. It has got strange terminology that he makes up for himself to portray across, and I'm pleased you enjoyed it. And that's exactly what it was for, and to stimulate reading of all the rest of his work as well. So if you haven't read them all, that's your homework, Zoe.
I know. on my list of things of books to read, so I'm looking forward to it. Now, I'm just going to ask you this question too as well. When looking at a new case, how do you rank the hierarchy of symptoms? Is your focus primarily on pathology, or is it etiology, mental, emotional? Where do you put the importance or factor in the importance of each of those?
Okay, here comes the standard teacher answer that's going to wind up everyone, and that is open quotation marks. It depends on the case. You know, because it's randomized and individualized each and every single time. But a very important part of it will be, what's the treatment plan you agree with the parent if it's a child, or what's the treatment plan you agree with the patient if it's an adult. So what do they want the focus on? 80% of the time, that's exactly where we're going. You know, okay, I've got this disease or this mental health issue or whatever it is, doesn't matter, you know. Okay, that's what we're working with. About 20% of the time, I've got a good reason to suggest, okay, let's wait because we need to do this first to get there. So I'm not giving a very clear, coherent answer here, because it is different each time. So I can't say I always prioritize pathology, because it does depend. But it's the treatment plan. That's the most important thing. The patient and the practitioner must have the same expectations of outcome. You know, see patients that come from other practitioners sometimes, and you know, I'll take the case and come to a remedy, and often it's a remedy that they've been prescribed for a short amount of time by the previous homeopath, and it's done well. It's done really good. So I'm thinking of cases of eczema now, and then they've, you know, given them the graphites or the antimonium crudum, and the eczema started to respond, and then the practitioners jumped to nat mure or mercury or silica. They've gone now to a fundamental layer, a similimum state, as opposed to a pathological similimum, as Burnett would call it. And now the eczema creeps back, and even though they get improvement on mentals and generals, that's not what they're paying the money for. You know, they're looking at, well, my skin's getting itchy again. Oh, this isn't working. So it's that communication with the individuals come for treatment. You've got to both be on the same page. And if you think you should go somewhere else than they're saying to go, got to communicate that clearly and have them on board. So yeah, it could be etiology, could be pathology, could be a minimum prescription.
Yeah, and if when you talk to them, you think, so as a practicing homeopathy, you can look at somebody and say, you know what, this is the major concern. You're concerned about that little skin itch.
Yeah.
But this that you told me during the consultation is a much higher priority, right? If you disagree with that, I think usually you can educate people as to why it's important to focus on one thing first above the other. But will you say, you know what, then it's good that we part ways because this is where the focus needs to be, or do you just really try to explain it out?
Yeah, exactly. And if we explain, the hierarchy and Herring's guiding principles and inside to outside and skin eruptions and perhaps the seesaw balance with some respiratory diseases, then a lot of people will get it. And then that also makes it easier as you travel through the case if things like that come back from the past. And you go, oh, that's what he said would happen. Then they're forewarned, they've got an understanding. And also it's going to be transitory. You're going to go out the other side of that. So, and then an embellishment to this particular topic here is the dimension of time, how long it's going to take to get there. And I think that's a crucial aspect that we need to communicate, how fast or slow we think we'll treat through a particular lesion or mental emotional state. And Hahnemann would refuse to take on patients who wouldn't give him what he deemed the appropriate amount of time. If he wasn't getting a year or 2 years, then he can't take that case on. And I think that's something that we need to build in as well to our prognosis.
I agree with that. And understanding pathology to understand prognosis and how long it'll take is really important as well. But yeah. If they're saying, I'll give you, somebody's telling me, and this was a homeopath that, a very nice person that I met many years ago, but he said he had somebody come to him, I just want this acne cleared up. I've got my wedding in 2 weeks. There's no way it'll happen. There's no way. And, it could be a fluke, but you can't promise something that will take longer, and he didn't. But it's just like sometimes you get asked to do things that you can't do, and I think it being telling the real expected time span for seeing improvement or to get to their end goal is important, so that you don't waste each other's time. Because if somebody's going to take something for 2 months and expect to be at the point of 2 years, then they're probably going to leave and they're not going to be happy. But it's going to take 2 years. It's because this isn't like a medication where you take it and immediately you feel better and immediately. You can get a headache that goes pretty quickly, I have to say, with a homeopathic remedy. But for the chronic issues, it's generally not overnight, and or you don't get an immediate sense of change. I mean, again, you might have the mental emotional clear up, but if you came in and you have acne, you want it to clear up, and it might take a little while. So at that point, you're not. I think just being forthright with your patients and then if they want to try something else or go to another modality, which might be the what they choose if they really need something done quickly, but if you explain how homeopathy works and they're on board with taking the time to go through the process and understanding that it's a two-way street. You're helping yourself heal through providing the information and the observations of what happens during the remedy. I think it's very therapeutic in that sense on its own. I mean, that's not what heals people. I want to be clear on that, because a lot of people think, oh, but you're sharing that. I'm like, no, it's a remedy. The remedy is making the changes. You don't have an abscess disappear with talking it out with somebody, because although I'm not going to get into energetic healing or distant healing or anything like that, because it's a very different, something different. So I'm not saying that energy healing or whatever wouldn't work, but just having a conversation literally is the remedy. So I know sometimes people might feel better talking about it and partaking in it, and that does feel therapeutic, but without actually taking the remedy, you're not going to see the improvements.
I agree. And I call back to one of your earlier questions on successful practice. The most successful practitioners, from homeopathy to allopathy to any discipline, is where the patient feels reassured and this person's trying their best to help them when they go for a consultation, and they leave thinking, okay, there is hope here, then there is something, even if it's palliation, you know. So I think that bedside manner is a vastly powerful tool that's hugely beneficial as part of the process, for sure.
100%. Yeah. If you don't have that, so I was shaking my head because I'm thinking, if you don't have that, you're not, you know, you've got to, people want to know that you're listening, that you care about what they're saying to you. And you know, and homeopaths who are taking good cases do listen, and they do care. You know, it's because you don't really go into homeopathy if you're boom, 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 boom. I don't really, you know, I'm not going to care about what somebody's saying, and I don't, you know, I'm just going to make up my mind a little bit earlier on. You pull in all those details, and it's just reassuring that you know, for a patient to be able to actually say everything, and sometimes it is getting it off one's chest does help a lot. But when it comes to pathology, then just continuing on with the remedy will help the underlying cause. It does feel good to have a practitioner or anybody who's even a music coach, somebody just who cares, listens, and has your best interest at heart. That makes all the difference in the world. Now, my last question is, when can we expect a new book? And you hinted at it. You said one was coming.
Yeah, I've just about to finish off chapter 1. There's 4 big chapters in this book. It's about 𝐂𝐻𝐻𝐸, and then chapter 1's probably one of the biggest, most complex chapters, which was surprising. It's about the constitutional level. I thought I'll just whiz through this. I know all this is easy, and then I couldn't leave any stone unturned and had to keep digging through the history. And where does that idea come from? Where does this come from? And it was much more complicated than I thought. So that was the big one. I think where we now are in November, I anticipate by early next year, I'll have the manuscript ready for the editing process, which will probably take another best part of 23. So I'm thinking, give or take a month or 2 this time next year. But it's vast. The Burnett one was something like 37,000. Can't see my copy of it. Words. This one is already almost 90,000, and it's got some stuff to do to it. So it's going to be, 3 times as big. But it's going to be out, getting edited in spring 23, and then however long that takes, then it'll be out. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I want to schedule you now tentatively for when the release comes, so that you can come on and discuss it in great detail. Okay. Looking forward to reading Burnett Rediscovered. Excellent. So that's one of the comments. I'm looking forward to your next book. This one, though, is honestly, if you don't have it now, it's a great reference. So I highly recommend it if you are looking for something that you can pick up quickly, and then you know, get to some really good points quickly. You know, really, it's speed. As you'll know a lot of these things, but the line of action and understanding that fully, I think you'll gain a lot from it. I think the marriage between understanding line of action pathology and what remedies work in what areas, it's really, really helpful, because it's not, you know, we aren't prescribing on the disease name, but understanding that you know, having understanding of that. And I have to say, homeopaths trained today in colleges around the world are trained well on pathology. So I don't know, you know, maybe it was a little bit different a little while ago, but when I went through school, and I understand all the schools are kind of doing the same high quality of understanding pathology quite well. And, you know, in relationship also to homeopathy, because it's a different approach. Anyway, I'm going on. I should, as I tend to. Dion, just lovely meeting you again today. So I'm glad you could join us. And I wish you all the best with finishing your new book. And I hope you will come back after I read it, so we can discuss the next one fully, and that would be lovely.
Yep, approximately 1 year, and I'll be starting again tomorrow morning. So I'll be back on the rough draft manuscript tomorrow morning. So yeah. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, and have a beautiful day and evening, because it's evening over there now. And okay. And okay. I'll just hold on for just 1 second. I'm just going to end the broadcast and we can say our final goodbyes in just a second. And thank you everybody for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers.